All right, this is going to be AP Calculus Lesson 4-6. We are on Advanced Implicit Differentiation. So where are we in the unit guide? We're at 4-6. We are getting closer and closer to the end of the unit. This is our last topic on tangent lines. Then we're going to go to related rates from here on out. So in my first example, I'm only going to give you x, and I want to find y prime, or dy dx, the derivative of y with respect to x. So here's our equation. When I take the derivative, you'll find that we need both an x and a y. So let's go ahead and find the y right now ahead of time. And even if you took the derivative and you said, okay, well, I don't know y, then you can always come back and find y from the original equation. So I only have x, let's find y. So let's find y. Because we know that we'll need y when we take the implicit differentiation. So if x is equal to 2, then I just plug in x equals 2. So I have something being plugged in, x squared plus xy equals 10. I know x equals 2, so plugging in. This is going to become 4 plus 2y is equal to 10. Therefore, 2y is equal to 6, and therefore y is equal to 3. Now I have an x and a y. So when I do my implicit differentiation, I can find what everything is equal to. So now let's do the dy dx. Okay, so I'm going to take the derivative. We'll switch colors here. Taking the derivative. You girls are helping me out. So take the derivative. What do I do? What do I write?
2x plus x y prime plus y is it equals 0.
Equals 0. Perfect. All right, so from here, I could either solve for y prime and then plug in, or I could plug in immediately. Which one do you girls prefer?
Plug in immediately. It's way easier.
Plug in immediately?
Yeah, we have problems for no.
2 times something plus something times y prime plus that y is equal to 0. So plugging in, this was x is now 2. This is x is 2 again, no more x's, so y we found to be 3. We can plug that in now, and then our equation now becomes 4 plus 2y prime plus 3 is equal to 0. Therefore, 2y prime is equal to negative 7, and therefore y prime is equal to negative 7/2 or negative 3.5. Whatever you prefer.
Wait, Mr. Snow, wouldn't it be? Why did you plug in 2 and then 3?
So this was an
For
x.
x and y.
Yeah, exactly.
Silly goose.
All right, so sometimes you'll have to find the other variable using the original equation and then plug those in. All right, so that's the first example. Let's go to our second example. Second and final example. So this is going to be example,
Wait, so y prime is negative 7/2.
yes, negative 7/2. So in this case, I'm finding the second derivative. Finding second derivative.
That's good. Feels good.
So that can be y double prime, or you might think of this as d squared y over dx squared.
I'm not a waster of that.
Well, I've had this one since.
All right, so here's our problem. If
I'm gonna.
Double prime. Usually.
x squared plus 2y squared,
Is it dx squared on the bottom?
dx squared, yes.
Why?
So that is a great question. I can talk about it after this lesson,
Oh.
why this is the format, but there is a reason. X squared plus 2y squared is equal to 16.
Rosalie, you nasty.
I really like that picture.
So the question is, what is d squared y over dx squared? That's equal to what?
I like that you had
And we'll say
It was like cute, but it was like also.
It was like really fun.
at the point 0, 2. We'll plug in a point as well. Do as much work as we can. All right, so what are we going to do?
So what are
So
you
solve for
doing?
y first,
Solve for y first? We can do that?
Oh.
right?
Well, I mean, we already have a y coordinate, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, okay. Then never mind. Then find the derivative.
Find the derivative. Okay, here we go. Derivative. Tell me what to write.
2x plus 4y times y equals 0.
Okay. Let's solve for y prime now.
Minus 2x.
So,
Oh, wait.
yep, subtract the 2x, so you have...
4y prime equals minus 2.
Trying to isolate that y prime, okay? And then finally, y prime is now isolated, and it is equal to...
Negative 2x over 4.
Yep, and I simplified all at the same time. I divided the top and bottom by 2.
And then can we plug in?
Okay, so there's kind of two notes to make here. When you're finding the second derivative, this is only for the second example, you do need to isolate. So I'm not going to write the do, but you do need to isolate y prime before plugging in, before substituting. Before substitution, because we need this equation in order to take y double prime. Okay, now that we have y prime, we can take y double prime. You should know that we're eventually going to plug into y prime because y prime is probably going to show up again in y double prime.
What are these?
I'll say that one more time because it is important, and maybe half of us will hopefully get this. I do eventually need to plug into y prime because when I take the second derivative, I'm going to have another y prime in the second derivative that I need to plug in for. So I can either do it now or later.
Oh, I get it.
Should we plug in now or later?
Now.
Now? Okay, let's plug in 0 and 2 into here. So this turns into a negative subbing in there over 2 subbing in there. And we're plugging in our 0, plugging in our 2. This becomes 0.
I'm dumb.
Wait, why did you say uh-oh?
Because I thought there was a 0 on the bottom. Because I did it back.
All right, so from there, I'm going to use a different color to do y double prime. If I had y prime, y double prime is going to be what? Read it out to me.
2 plus
Careful here.
Would it be
What rule am I using for this?
Oh, I thought we were doing it up on the... So we do it from the y prime equals?
Yep, so from the y prime, and then this is going to be y double prime.
Plus 4y.
So from here, come down into
And
here.
then that's where you have to isolate it so you get what y prime is.
Right, so we have y prime, now we can take the derivative of this to get y double prime.
So it'd be 2y
2y
times negative 1.
times negative 1, low d high, correct?
Oh. Minus x times 2 times y prime.
2y prime.
All over 2y squared.
2y quantity squared. Perfect. This is going to turn into, we'll simplify this a little bit. Actually, we can just plug in immediately if you guys would like. I think that might be easier. So it's going to be 2 times negative 2 times something. And this is going to be adding 2x y prime. And we know what y prime is, so I'm going to leave that as y prime for now. All over 2 times something, and all of
From
that
here we just plug
squared.
in?
Yeah, just plug in. So when I plugged in for y was 2. Over here I'm plugging in for x is 0. Remember that y prime, this 0 is going to come down here into y prime. And the y again is 2 here, so we just plugged everything in. So this becomes negative 4 plus 0, all of this divided by 4 squared. I'll pause there because this is pretty important. You have to know that we're plugging in for y prime. You can't just get rid of it. I mean, it happened to get rid of because we had a 0 for x. But a lot of the time in the homework, we're plugging in for y prime from our y prime equation. And this is going to be equal to negative 4 over, or this turns into negative 4 over 16, which is the same thing as negative 1/4. Yep.
I bet they expect us to do this problem in under like 2 minutes.
Yep. On the AP test, sometimes the hardest part is finding out that it's even asking for implicit differentiation. It's like, when do I know to use this? That's usually the hardest part.
Why is it necessary to do math fast?
It's not.
Why is it?
Why is it time? It's to keep everyone to the same standard. Otherwise, the people will take a few days. All right.
A few days? You really think people would stay in there that long?
Maybe. I don't know. All right.
Oh my
Questions on the
God.
notes?
I feel like I would stay for a long time,
All right.
but